I want to welcome everybody to the Athenaeum of Philadelphia's special meet and greet for the artists who are exhibiting in our current art exhibit. I'm Beth Hessel, the executive director. On screen, you also see Tess Galen, our events coordinator, Jim Carroll, our Jim, I forget your title.
Imaging specialist or whatever.
Digital Imaging Center. I think all of our brains are kind of halfway here today, but it's a beautiful sunny spring day, and we're so pleased you all are here to celebrate our month-long exhibit with three artists, Michelle Foster Lucas, Deborah Joseph, and today's guest, Dar James. The title of our exhibit is Artists Unmasked, a celebration of art, artists, and the Athenaeum's Regional Digital Imaging Center. We are celebrating three amazing artists who have been longtime customers of our Digital Imaging Center, which does work not only for the Athenaeum, other special collections in the region, but many artists who need a good place to get good digitizations and scans and prints of their work as they try to sell their work and move it forward. We're so pleased. I don't know what my problem is today. I'm so pleased you all are here. As you see, we're a little informal at the Athenaeum, even though we have a very fancy sounding name. We are a member-supported circulating library. We are a research center with a globally recognized collection of material related to Philadelphia's built environment. And we have an imaging center, and we have lots and lots of programs that are currently virtual, but soon we hope to begin doing them in person as well. If you're interested, I hope you'll want to learn more about the Athenaeum. But now I want to turn this over to Jim, who is going to lead us in a lovely conversation with Dar, and they'll have a little Q&A, and then he will open it up to questions from all of you, which you can put in the bottom in the chat or the Q&A section.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you everyone who's taking the time out of their schedule to attend today. And I just want to remind everyone that you can come and see the show at the Athenaeum in our gallery space all the way through April 1st, really, because April 2nd we're actually closed. But it's Monday through Thursday. You can come in between 10 and 4 and check it out in person. And so on Wednesdays, we're open till 6, so you can come in then too. But I want to introduce you to Dar. She's our second up in our artist conversations. And Dar is a writer, and she's a designer and a teacher and an illustrator of children's picture books and a speaker on creativity and education. And she is currently a creativity coach, and she describes herself a painter of trees and circles. But I'm not sure how long Dar has been coming to the Athenaeum for scanning, but honestly, I feel like I've known you forever. Like she's the kind of person you just meet and you instantly feel like you're old friends and you just know them forever. And it's great to see her come in, and her artwork is absolutely beautiful. So you really need to come check it out in person. So I got a few questions for you, Dar, if you're ready.
Well, first of all, I think you're the same kind of person, because I feel like I've known you forever. I think I know that you and I have a great rapport, and we've always had a great rapport. And I feel like finding the Athenaeum was one of the luckiest things that happened in my professional career, but like getting you as a friend was like this other bonus. I really mean that sincerely. And I have tried to spread the word far and wide, but I also have this sense like if too many artists show up there, I won't get the spot that I need when I need it. But yeah, I think what you guys do there for artists is amazing. And if you're an artist who needs your work archived, and I could go on about that forever because it is so important. Archiving our work is so important. So thank you for all those things, but also I feel the same way about you.
Thank you. And you're right, you brought up the archiving of it. I didn't even think of to mention that we actually archive all that stuff for you, the artists too. So you have your copy of it and we have a backup for you. So it's kind of extra protected. Thanks, Dar. I really appreciate it. I definitely feel the same way about our friendship, and it's great to work with you. Hopefully it'll continue on for many years. All right, so let's get to the questions. All right, so first, I would like to know how you would describe yourself as an artist.
So for a long time, I've called myself an accidental artist, but I feel like after 25 years of doing that, it's not an accident anymore. So when I thought about that, very simply, I think of myself as a working and a teaching artist. And those parts of me are both equally important. The way that I interact with people, and teacher is kind of I think it's a tricky word. I am a licensed or certified educator for 7 through 12 English. And I did not go to school for art school. I actually went to school for education. My father was an artist. My mother was a college professor. So there's like this weird morphing. But my early years, truthfully, what I realized is I thought I didn't want to do either of those things. My parents and my upbringing was complicated. And so there was a lot of resistance. So I've spent my whole life really using art as a way to know myself. And what I know is that I love making it as much as I love helping other people make it. That without the part that involves other people, I am not personally filled up by just making it by myself, for myself, to sell, whatever. So there are two parts, but I'm a working teaching artist.
That's kind of part of your personality too. I mean, you're just a people person. So I could see you not wanting to be like locked up in a room by yourself, just doing work and not really.
No, but it's a funny thing though, because well, over the weekend on Sunday, I had a live class, and my friend Natalie, Natalie, she's one of your artists too. So she was here for the weekend because she's like in my pod, and she came into my studio, and then my other friend who's not an artist came in, and on Sunday I set up a third camera. Normally to teach I have just this one and the overhead, but I set up a third camera, and they were kind of like, oh yeah, I want to be on camera, and I'm like, come on, it'll be really fun, and they joined in. And I got so much good feedback because I had other people in my space. Like,
Electric.
I wouldn't have thought that would have like changed the way that I teach, but now I know it really does, because having people and getting energy that's like in part of an exchange is really important for me, and it really invigorates me. Probably makes me a better teacher. But most of my students I would describe as non-artists. So I don't want anybody on this talk to get the idea that I'm teaching all of this like high and mighty kind of art or super academic theories, although I can talk about colors and lines. I'm not a traditionally trained artist. I'm self-trained. And so what I'm really doing is just sharing ideas and hoping to inspire people or discover things together, because most of my art trajectory myself to become an artist has been about just discovery.
Awesome. Great. Thanks. So what actually inspired you to begin painting? I mean, like, I know.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering like how old you were, like when you started, what really got you going in the actual painting?
So I was like a crafty person my whole life. And, without going into a whole bunch of things about my background, I said I come from a complicated place. I left home early at 17 because complicated places are hard to be in. And I went to grad school for education. I had a degree in creative writing as an undergrad, and I went to graduate school for education, and I taught for a little while. Mostly it was student teaching and substitute teaching. And I was young and I was afraid. And I'd come from a place that I didn't completely understand who I was. And so I was a very confused young person, and really into seeking and trying to put who I was together. I know that sounds cliche, but I was and I was afraid. I was afraid that I couldn't make it on my own doing anything. I had no passion for anything. Like really, I was a social person. I was a bartender. I went to school in education because I thought that was all really that I could do with a creative writing degree. And maybe it was, but I would have never believed that I could have gone into like public policy or the sciences, and I could have, but I didn't know that about myself, and nobody had ever had those conversations with me. So I freaked out and I got married. I mean, there's no two ways about it. And I made choices about my life that had I been more confident and had I understood more about what I was capable of, that I may not have made. Now, all those things led to me becoming an artist because art saved my life. So when you ask me, when did I start making art? I'm going to tell you, in my kitchen in rural Ohio, in a marriage that I knew I wasn't going to stay in with 2 babies in diapers, we started making little salt dough ornaments. And I sold them, and I don't even know why or how. This is before Instagram, before the internet was really, social media was a thing, because if I would have been myself and compared myself to all the people that I see on Instagram and, you know, posting their artwork, I probably would have just crushed myself into, you know, complete pathetic self-loathing. But I took my stuff to church parking lots in rural Ohio and I sold them. And that's how it started. And it was literally that kind of a progression of selling a thing, getting feedback, going back, revamping it. And that's still how I make my artwork now. And I think people look at it and they see all the dots and it's complicated and all that, but it has been 25 years because you just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And you take what you know and you stick it back in there and you evolve, and that's what happens. But art saved my life. I mean, it just did. It's how I found who I am.
And I definitely understand what you mean and relate, because I'm, as a photographer, and I also do stage theater, and you know, I felt the same way. It's a great way to focus your energies and find something about yourself and that you can keep building on and learning from.
Well, and incidentally, the things that you find out about yourself aren't always nice.
No, of course
you
not.
know,
Hiding from some of those things, but you know, it leads you down to that path. You know, to really create something honestly, you have to be honest with yourself. So
yeah, and I think you also have to be willing to make the ugly thing, and yeah, I mean, yes, I made a lot of ugly things. I still make a lot of ugly things.
I don't know. I haven't seen them. The ones I've seen all look pretty good.
Well, I've shorted my life, you know.
So let's move on to, you know, you're a speaker on creativity and education, and I kind of wondered what led you there. Was it just because of your education? I mean, what led
Yeah, well, what I've discovered about myself is that, you know, I went into education because I felt like that was a natural fit for somebody with an English degree. And I went to a terrible program. I can't even believe that I had to pay for it. I went to Cleveland State University. I followed a very dear friend to Cleveland, and he was getting a PhD at Case Western, but I could have never afforded, nor did I have the grades to go to Case Western. So I went to Cleveland State University, and it's like it was, I mean, this was 1992. So I feel when I reminisce about my experience, I mean, I had a couple of good mentor teachers that I worked with in the student teaching things that I did, but for the most part, the courses that I took were like I had a film strip class.
Mm.
I mean, I realized it was 1992, but there was an internet. So, you know, it was just that. But what started to happen was my imagination was ignited for education at whatever level of awareness that I had. And when I get on my education soapbox, because I'm going to tell you, it is related to everything screwed up that is happening in our country, in our world. I feel so strongly about education, all different kinds. And that could be a weekend long conference, but I sort of accidentally got into children's book illustration. And once I had a book and I was invited to be in classrooms as a visiting author illustrator, that was where everything just took off. And I met a couple of really instrumental people who I was able to experiment in real classrooms with kids, and the ideas that I had, and bringing art and writing into mostly elementary classrooms just kind of confirmed so many things that I had been interested in about education. And as my children have grown, I've I've changed my focus. Like they're young adults now. And truth is like, I enjoy still working with children, but I much more enjoy working with adults because I don't have children underfoot anymore.
All right. Well, it was funny because I was just about to ask you about how you got involved with the writing and illustrating of children's books. But
So when I was in the creative writing program, I actually focused on the short story and on poetry.
okay.
And I'm going to tell you that I wasn't very good. Like, I know I wasn't very good. And I kind of knew then, but you know, once you kind of pick your major, you're like, okay, I got to do this. Like, you just want to get the degree. And my poems, they weren't workshopped even very well. Like everybody in the room kind of knew that I was this odd duck, and I didn't really know why. And so then I just put that aside, and I was making collage, mostly note cards. And then we moved to the East Coast to New Jersey, and I started doing some art festivals and stuff. And my collage work was decidedly child oriented, and I had young children, so I was making art for their walls. It was a lot of animals, bright colors and flowers and trees, a lot of the same colors that I use now, but the motifs were simpler, and they were definitely more focused on delighting children, probably my own children if I was thinking about it. But I was doing all these art festivals, and everybody kept saying, oh, your work looks like it should be in a children's book. So that kind of tossed around in my head for a long time. And when I revisited the poems that I had been writing for these workshops during my last couple of years in college, what I realized is they were children's books. If you take a poem, like a children's book is 32 pages. And if you take a poem and you stretch it out, you can put a little bit of it on each one of 32 pages. So I thought, well, that's an interesting idea. Maybe they just didn't get what I was writing. Maybe I didn't get what I was writing myself. So I worked on my first book, which was called I Love the Night, and it's out of print now, sadly. But I decided that I was and I was already making like a nice, decent living with the artwork that I was exhibiting and selling. And I was making reproductions. I had a small digital studio at home. I had taught myself how to use the Adobe suite. Like I wasn't, a lot of this stuff like built up over time. But this idea of this children's book wouldn't leave me alone. And I understood how difficult it was to get into the world of publishing. And to be honest, I've always been kind of like a self-starter and kind of like an indie kind of person. So I thought, well, I will contract with a printer in Hong Kong, and I'll teach myself how to use InDesign, and I'll make the most beautiful book, because I was already doing some graphic design and like brochures and logos for people. So I made this book, and I spent a lot of time in Borders with my kids. And we really gravitated towards, artsy books. And so, I knew that I wanted like a matte cover, and I very carefully picked out the end papers. And I mean, now I know I printed the most expensive book that I've ever printed as my first book, but it was beautiful. I bought 1,000 copies of it. They were delivered to my driveway. And if you've never seen what 1,000 books looks like on a pallet coming off of a tractor trailer, like you think about it, you see the bill, the invoice, but when they get there, you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do with all of these? And I thought, okay, if it takes me 10 years to sell all of these, like it was a creative impulse, right? It was a project. It was one of those things where you just step off into the unknown. You have no idea what it's going to do. And then I decided that, you know what, I know Borders and Barnes and Noble don't take unsolicited manuscripts, which they don't. But I first sent it to Borders because Borders was kind of like the more, I don't know, like trendy, Barnes and Noble was kind of stuffy and more traditional, and Borders was kind of like funky and young. So I sent them a copy of the book. And this woman called me on the phone one afternoon when my kids and dogs were like running around crazy. It was lunchtime. And I didn't even say, Brown Dog Books, may I help you? Like, I wasn't even pretending. Like, it was just Dar in her kitchen. And I think she was surprised because it was like a circus at my house. And she said, is this Brown Dog Books? And I said, oh yeah, who is this? And long story short, she bought 1,500 copies of the book, which meant I immediately had to go back to print. And then a few weeks later, Barnes and Noble did the same thing. And I was off and running, which is that's not a completely happy story, because I learned a lot about the publishing business, that it's no return, that you have to go through Baker and Taylor. And so I learned a lot of really hard, expensive lessons, but that is how it all started. And I mean, since then, I've contracted with Children's Book of the Month Club, where 2 of my books were featured member selection. And most recently, last year, If I Were a Tree was added to an anthology, a children's anthology for Houghton Mifflin. So that was like actually one of the most exciting things to have happened.
Nice. Great. Thank you. So speaking of that, why trees?
You know, I knew you were going to ask this, and so I thought about it. Like, the first answer is going to sound really not romantic at all. So I was doing collage, and I was illustrating those books, and I discovered this adhesive paper when I was working on my 3rd book, which was Mavis and Her Marvelous Mooncakes, and it started to make the ability I had to be more detailed possible, because I wasn't using mediums and glue sticks. And so sometimes when we discover a new technique or a new material, it changes our work so drastically. And what it allowed me to do was to really get into the kind of detail that I've come to love. And that is definitely because I'm an anxious person trying to work out a bunch of baggage in my life. So, but I had this idea that after I finished my 3rd book, which was the most detailed, and it also, my 3rd book included characters. The books before that had been concept books. So when you include a character, which I will never do again, and I don't even know if I'll ever illustrate another book again, but my books didn't have a beginning, middle, and end. They weren't like stories, they were more conceptual. So I decided to do this book about characters, and having to recreate the same characters on a page over and over again, like, nearly drove me into a kind of creative panic. Like, it was, you know, I was going to get through it, but it was really hard. So after that book, I did If I Were a Tree, because I sat here thinking, most of the time when you write a book, this is like a big secret. I don't think I've ever told this secret. Most of the time when you write a book, you write it and then you illustrate it. But I was so exhausted after doing Mavis and Her Marvelous Mooncakes that for my next book, and I was already deeply involved in doing school programs. And the only way that you keep getting invited back for school programs is if you keep putting out a book and a book and a book. And I created enough momentum that that's what people were expecting. And so, and I was putting up all the money, because that's what you do when you're a self-publisher. And I had a warehouse that I was renting books for. And so I realized that I had to keep this machine going, which there's another darker part to that too. So I finished this book. And so I thought, for my next book, well, what could I do that would make a book happen really fast? Maybe I could retrofit some artwork that I had been doing and write it to fit some images that I already had. And it happened to be that I had a lot of collage trees. So, and I don't know why I had a lot of collage trees. I think because the previous books had so many outdoor scenes and nature and leaves. So that was kind of what I was doing, was a lot of like nature inspired flowers and trees. But it turned out I had a lot of trees. And even if I didn't have single tree pieces of artwork, I had created scenes where I just cropped out trees. Like, when I tell you this was like a Frankenstein book, and it was called If I Were a Tree. And the book is very tall. I probably have a copy of it here around somewhere. It's tall and narrow. It was, I think, 5 by 12. Mm-hmm. And so it was a weird trim size. And if I didn't have an illustration to fit it, I just created these color blocks with reverse text. And then that became a theme throughout the book. So I was kind of like retrofitting my art. I was designing this retrofit, and I wrote the book. And the people that I used to run with, they teased me about it so hard. They were like, if I were a tree, if I were a rock, if I were, and they were like, I can't believe you're doing this book. And I said, well, I don't know. It'll get something out there into the world very quickly. And it's my best-selling book. It is the one that was just anthologized. It's probably the one that's been the most profitable to me. And then a second part of it was that it was and is the only book that resonates with adults as well as with children. So when I am out like at a show or an exhibit, what I find is that adults connect with it. And the words are very metaphorical. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but trees, and so that was like kind of the jumping off point, was what can I make really fast? But trees are a metaphor for so many things. And when you think about the phrases that come from trees, like, send down roots and grow strong and weather the winds and branch out and all those things are things that we relate to being human and surviving and growing, and, family tree of knowledge, all those kinds of things. And even the shape of a tree with its branches outstretched is human-ish. So you like think about the trees in like Lord of the Rings, or where trees become living characters in some of the folklore and folk tales that we know. So trees resonate with people in a way that nothing else I know of does, and I find that they're a comfort to go to. And you wouldn't think that you could get tired of making them, but that kind of repetition in my life has been good for the kind of person I am. But it also seems to resonate with people in my audience. A lot of times when I've changed gears, like circles don't show for me so well in the area where I live, where people know me. I send a lot of my experimental circle and resin work upstate New York at a gallery I have, because people here expect to come to an exhibit and a show, and they expect to see trees.
Makes sense. Well, I definitely think that all of the trees are beautiful, and what I like about it is like the little things in those images, like the ones that have like a crow here, or you add all these little tiny things that are just make it pop off the page, and especially with your dots. And some of them, I feel like, how many dots do you put in one image? I feel like there might be 1,000 little dots of paint on there. And
I don't know. I have carpal tunnel for sure now. Like it's, and actually in the last few years, I probably need to do something about it, or wear something, or probably go back to doing more yoga. But the dots they've become like a signature for me, and I know that. And it's not finished until it's filled up with so many. And my paintings have become more complicated over time, those tree paintings. And I think part of it, what happens for me is when I get into something new, it's to settle down and be less complicated in my art. So the circles came about because the trees had become so complicated. The trees came about because the collages had become so complicated. So a lot of the times when I evolve, it's to quiet that part of my brain that's like, this thing needs more, it's not good enough, or whatever the case may be. And I guess that's a good thing, because that's how we all grow.
Mm-hmm. And I see it in a lot of artists, a lot of, constantly revisiting, redoing, reworking.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes I feel like it's just a never ending process. If I left a piece of art in front of an artist, I feel like they constantly do something to it. Someone took it away from them.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you can do. No more. Well, I'm going to open it up to the people watching and see if there's any questions, just because we've been here for a half hour now, and I don't want to go run too long. See if anyone has anything that they would like to ask Dar. You can either put it in a chat or in the question and answer. All right. Well, so while we're waiting, one more question I would like to ask you is about being a creativity coach. What is that, and how long have you been doing that? Is it individual coaching?
It's actual coaching. So I was divorced in my marriage. I left my marriage in 2011. My divorce was final in 2012. And I was out in the world as a single mom. And I was very worried about being able to make it financially. And that fear, it probably is what kept me in my marriage longer than I might have been. And the world doesn't make that easy for artists to feel confident about that. But I got into creativity coaching, I thought, as a way to like supplement my income. But what I discovered was I was really interested in it for myself, like going through the process myself. So it helped me. It was kind of like self-help. And I studied with this woman whose name is Jill Badonsky. And you can find out about her online because she's out there, and she has a program called Kaizen Muse, and it's based around the idea of Japanese philosophy Kaizen, which is small steps lead to big change. It's all about changing our habits, rewiring our brains, thinking, looking at what's working instead of what isn't working. And so there is an opportunity. It's what I employ in all of the ways that I teach, particularly adults right now, but I'm available to work one-on-one with people as well.
Nice. All right, so we got some questions for you, Dar. First one I see is from Shira Kramer. It says, the dots reminded me of Aboriginal art. Were you influenced by the use of dots in Aboriginal art?
I love the dots of Aboriginal art, but no, not at all. No. The dots were influenced by a woman named Jane Ray. She's a British illustrator. Her art and my art look nothing alike, but she did a lot of illustrations for Orchard Books. Mainly, she took old folk tale and fairy tales, and they put a new spin on them, made them contemporary. And my children and I loved those as bedtime stories. And I just completely fell in love with her illustrations, which are also very Marc Chagall-like. Her work is gorgeous. But she did a lot of dots. She didn't use them in the same way that I do, but that was what attracted me to dots in the first place.
Nice. All right, so next one is from Pope High 4. Do you draw your designs and then paint with acrylic?
Never.
Never.
Never, and I almost never keep a sketchbook. I ruminate a lot. I take a walk almost every day. I used to be a runner, but now I'm a walker because of my meniscus problems and my age. But when I am out walking or running, I visualize work that I want to make, that I'm thinking about. It almost never has a sketch, like almost never, never, never. And I resist keeping a sketchbook. But I've since started making these little artist trading cards, which I'm obsessed with. So those I've discovered could be studies for larger works, although I kind of just like them as they are, just little ATC cards. But no, I don't actually enjoy drawing that much, except that what I do on top of all my drawings could be considered a drawing on top of a painting.
Nice. All right, so Eileen Baird is asking if we can show some of your work from the exhibit, sure. But I don't think me and Dar don't know how to technically do that. Maybe if Tess or someone in the background knows how to share, we'll do that. Or I'll.
Can't you just?
And you can go on with a few other questions while Tess gets those up.
All right, sounds good. So the next question. Let's see here.
Of course, these are portfolio pieces that she's got up right now and not from the exhibit, just to clarify. Most of the work on this page, well, I think all of it is already in the homes and places. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you can see that trees are definitely a theme.
Okay, Dar. So I got Elisa Schroeder is asking, she says, tell us more about being a golden artist.
Okay, so in 2016, well, I knew about the Golden. Golden has two programs: the Working Artist Program and the Artist Educator Program. The Artist Educator Program is what I'm in, and it is the less committed. If you're a working artist for Golden, you're actually working for them and being paid by them. The Artist Educator Program, we are a bunch of working and teaching artists all over the world who teach other people about Golden products. So Golden is still a family and employee owned business. They're in New Berlin, New York. I was using Golden paints before before I ever applied to them, and I'd always known about their program. Patty Brady started it probably like 20 years ago, maybe longer. Golden, because they were a family owned business, they were having trouble competing with some of the better known, more corporate types of paint brands. And so Patty came up with this idea that the best people to teach and sell Golden products would be artists who showed other artists how to use them. And when you go into a store, the different choices of acrylics and mediums and gels and all that can be really intimidating. I know I've been intimidated. So I knew about the program, which is they take applications each year, and you can go to their website and you can learn about that program somewhere on there, and you can apply. And they accept 20 people each year. And I got really nervous right as the deadline came up, because I thought, oh, they'll never want me because I'm not like a fancy, I don't have a curriculum vitae, and I don't have all the art school credentials. But what they really want are people who are out there showing other people about their products. So it is unabashedly a marketing program that they use. But I have learned so much. So I was accepted into the program in 2016, and I went to New Orleans, and I literally had a crash course on their products over 5 days. It was the time of my life. I made friends through the program and continue to make friends through the program that are some of the best people I know. If people were in my Circle Celebration class, all my guest artists just about were Golden educators, and I get paid in paint, which is a great thing for me. I'm happy to do that. Basically, if you're interested in applying to the program, you need to have some sort of a history of educating. So they want people who are already teaching about 15 to 20 workshops a year. Maybe you have a book, maybe you have an online class, you have a social media presence, something like that. But it's been one of the most rewarding things that I've been involved with. And it's great, because I've learned, and I'm still learning about paints and mediums. There's so many things that you can do with acrylics. It's mind blowing.
Nice. So I got another question from Julia Morton. Actually, it's a few questions, but she saying that she's like, "Hi, Dar, wonderful event today. I absolutely love your work. These are the questions I would like to ask. How many hours per day do you usually paint? Do you feel any pressure to deliver a certain amount of art? And are you comfortable with speaking with people who come to your exhibition?"
I hope it's obvious that I'm comfortable speaking with just about anybody anywhere. I mean, I know we're virtual, but I joke, just pull my string, and it's like, da, 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 da. I do feel pressure to create a certain amount of work, but I'm learning also. I'll be 53 this year, and I've been a people pleaser and a yes sayer my whole life. And that has not always been a good thing for me. So I'm learning to have better boundaries about what I can accomplish in life and what I ought to say yes to. Having said that, though, I'm a working artist. This is how I make my living. This is how I pay my bills. And so I'm a professional with people who are expecting things of me. And so, yes, I feel like there's a certain amount of classes that I need to develop. I have gallerists who rely on me to say, hey, I have this new painting. I want to be able to say yes to a show like yours. And so I did put pressure on myself to create the big centerpiece just for your show, because I wanted it there, and I had it knocking around in my brain, and I had that big canvas that was all primed with gold, and I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So how many hours do I spend a day painting? not as many as I'd like. I mean, I always wish there were more hours. I typically do not start painting. I was a bartender. I mean, I kept late hours my whole life. So I get my sort of mojo going around 2 o'clock. So I usually work from like 2 to midnight on painting. That's when I kind of get excited about painting. I sleep in until like 8 o'clock. I look at the news. I watch videos in the morning. I make breakfast, and then I go for a long walk. And when I come back from my walk, that's when I want to start painting. Sometimes I can't though. Sometimes instead of those work hours being painting, they're administrative work. Sometimes, like right now, I have to work on my website because I'm launching a new website on Friday. Or sometimes I have to work on editing videos or whatever. But yeah, I like to paint mostly in the afternoons and the evenings. And I listen to podcasts mostly, sometimes music, mostly talk. I hope that answered your question.
I think so. Thank you so much, Dar. I really appreciate it. I think that answers all the questions. If you check in chat, Dar, there's some other comments directly to you, just thanking you for your talk and your artwork. So I think that's about it. I think that ties it up. I don't want to drag it out too long. I know people have to get back to work and things to do. And we just want to, again, remind you to come out and see it live in the gallery here. We'll be here Monday through Thursday, 10 to, I believe it's 10 to 4, and Wednesday still 6 o'clock. We'd love to have you come in.
And Tess, if you want to put the exhibit, the link for